USS Thresher. The USS Thresher was launched in 1960 as the most advanced nuclear-powered attack submarine of its time. It was equipped with the latest sonar, a quieter design to evade enemy detection, and an incredibly strong hull for deep dives. However, like many new technologies, it faced challenges during early testing. After its initial trials, the Thresher underwent overhauls to address issues like pipe joints and the seawater system. By April 1963, it was determined to be ready for deep-sea trials, which was basically a test to prove its operational limits. The submarine, with 129 people on board, including officers, crew, and civilian technicians, set off from Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, accompanied by the surface support ship USS Skylark. On April 10, 1963, at around 7:30 a.m., the Thresher began a series of diving tests in the Atlantic Ocean, roughly 220 miles east of Cape Cod. During this stunt, the communication between the Skylark and the submarine was maintained through underwater acoustic signals. By 9:13 a.m., Thresher had swum down to roughly 1,000 feet when the Skylark received a message. Experiencing minor difficulty, have a positive up angle, attempting to blow. This indicated the submarine was trying to expel ballast water to get back to the surface. However, this distorted message also meant that the submarine's ballast blow system, the mechanism that uses compressed air to force water out of the ballast tanks for an emergency move, was not functioning properly. It is believed that a poorly soldered pipe joint gave way under extreme pressure, flooding the submarine's internal compartments with seawater. The flood likely short-circuited electrical systems, shutting down the nuclear reactor and leaving the submarine powerless and sinking. By 9:18 a.m., the Skylark crew heard a series of loud metallic noises. They were later identified as the Thresher collapsing under immense pressure at the depths of approximately 2,400 feet, which was far beyond its structural limit. The Skylark tried desperately to contact the Thresher for hours, receiving no response. By afternoon, it was clear the submarine and its crew had been lost. Subsequent searches using deep-sea technology located the Thresher's wreckage scattered across the ocean floor. The Navy determined that the disaster was caused by a combination of mechanical failure and insufficient emergency procedures. The inability to blow ballast tanks, however, sealed the submarine's fate. This tragic loss of both the vessel's lives and the crew on board led the Navy to initiate the Sub-Safe program, a strong safety protocol for all submarines. USS Scorpion. The disappearance and sinking of the USS Scorpion are undoubtedly still remembered as a tragic combo in U.S. Navy history. The Scorpion, a skipjack-class nuclear-powered submarine, was lost on May 22, 1968, with all 99 crew members aboard. Its last known location was in the North Atlantic, about 400 nautical miles southwest of Azores. On May 20, 1968, the Scorpion was conducting a surveillance mission in the Mediterranean. It was supposed to return to Norfolk, Virginia on May 27th, but after being overdue for several hours, the Navy initiated a search operation. The search involved over 55 ships and 35 aircraft and was primarily focused between May 28th and May 30th. A brief radio message, including the Scorpion's codename Brandywine, was received by search parties on May 29th, but its source could not be identified. By June 5th, the submarine was officially declared presumed lost. A massive search continued, and by the end of October 1968, the wreckage of the Scorpion was found on the ocean floor at a depth of about 9,800 feet, roughly 460 miles southwest of the Azores. The discovery was aided by the use of the Navy's sound surveillance system, which had captured the implosion of the submarine's hull as it passed its crush depth. Acoustic expert Gordon Hamilton also assisted in identifying the wreck's location, and Chester Buchanan's camera sled was used to capture images of the wreckage. The examination of the wreckage revealed that the bow of the submarine had slipped along the seafloor, creating a trench, while the sail was dislodged. But the most disturbing was that the hull had collapsed due to the extreme pressure, causing the vessel to break into two. The engine room collapsed telescopically into the hull. Strangely, the torpedo room appeared to be relatively intact, though some damage was observed, including a missing hatch. Several investigations followed, but the exact cause of the sinking remains unclear. The Navy's 1968 inquiry found no conclusive evidence of sabotage or mechanical failure. However, the investigation raised suspicion that a torpedo detonation might have played a role. In 1984, documents obtained by the Norfolk, Virginia pilot and the Leader Star suggested that the torpedo may have exploded while the crew attempted to disarm it, possibly leading to the entire disaster. In 1970, the Naval Ordnance Laboratory conducted an acoustic analysis of the sound signals generated by the submarine's implosion. Their findings indicated that the destruction likely occurred at the depths of around 2,000 feet, with further fragments falling to the ocean floor from a depth of 9,000 feet. Despite these investigations and studies, the true cause of the Scorpion's disappearance remains a mystery. K-141 Kursk. On August 12, 2000, during a large-scale naval exercise in the Barents Sea, K-141 Kursk suffered explosions that ultimately led to the deaths of all 118 personnel on board. This exercise, titled Summer X, was the first important naval drill held by the Russian Navy in over a decade and included 30 ships, submarines, and the flagship Pyotr Veliky. Kursk was equipped with a full combat loadout, and its crew had recently been recognized as the best in the Northern Fleet. Yet, tragedy struck when the submarine prepared to fire practice torpedoes at the battlecruiser Pyotr Veliky. The Russian Navy's investigation concluded that the disaster was caused by the failure of a Type 65 hydrogen peroxide-fueled torpedo. A faulty weld allowed highly concentrated hydrogen peroxide to leak and react with other components, triggering a chemical explosion equivalent to 220 to 550 pounds of TNT. This initial explosion caused the submarine to sink in shallow water, approximately 300 feet deep and 83 miles off Severomorsk. Just over 2 minutes later, a second, much larger explosion occurred due to the detonation of several other torpedo warheads, releasing energy equivalent to 3 to 7 tons of TNT. This second explosion destroyed the submarine's first 3 compartments and caused major structural damage. While some crew members survived the initial blast, the conditions inside the Kursk were horrible. The final explosion killed or incapacitated everyone in the first few compartments and left only 23 men alive in the stern's 9th compartment. These survivors attempted to survive the harsh environment, relying on emergency oxygen-generating devices. However, one of these devices became contaminated with seawater, causing a chemical fire that consumed the remaining oxygen. Investigations revealed that some sailors tried to escape the fire by submerging themselves underwater, but the lack of breathable air in the extreme conditions ultimately claimed their lives. The Russian response to the disaster was heavily criticized, both domestically and internationally. Offers of assistance from the British and Norwegian navies were initially declined, as Russian officials insisted they could manage the rescue independently. This delay, combined with logistical challenges, ensured that no rescue attempt succeeded before the crew's death. In 2001, a Dutch salvage consortium, including Mammoet and Smit International, raised the wreck of the Kursk from the sea floor, except for its heavily damaged bow, which contained sensitive weapons and torpedo fragments. This section was later destroyed with explosives. K-129. In March 1968, under the waters of the Pacific Ocean, the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 went on what would become its final mission. Ordered to patrol near Hawaii, the submarine carried 98 men, including a mix of expert submariners and special personnel. Its mission, although kept hidden, likely aimed to gather intelligence and test American defenses. By March 8th, K-129 had reached its patrol zone. The crew maintained routine operations, balancing the challenges of tight quarters and unpredictable seas. That evening, Captain Vladimir Kobzar ordered a standard procedure: surface the boat using snorkel system to recharge the batteries and air supplies. As the submarine rose up, strong waves slammed the hull, and strong winds rushed across the Pacific. Amid these harsh conditions, seawater likely overwhelmed the snorkel's head valve or the system's piping, allowing water to rush into the submarine's engine room. In seconds, hell broke loose. Salt water surged through the boat's ventilation lines, slipping into the battery compartments. The seawater reacted violently with the submarine's lead-acid batteries, generating toxic chlorine gas. Fires and short circuits ignited in the electrical systems, and the crew went into the darkness as the submarine lost all its power. The aft compartments flooded rapidly, causing the K-129 to sink. At a critical depth, the pressure became unbearable. The submarine's hull buckled, splitting into 2 massive sections. The forward section briefly remained afloat, but eventually sank to the seafloor, nearly 16,500 feet below. The tragedy was over in minutes. The crew, trapped in the freezing, pitch-black depths, faced a painful death. The wreck lay undetected until months later, when U.S. intelligence discovered it. The CIA used the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a specially built vessel, to recover portions of the submarine in 1974. The wreck revealed the terrible conditions the K-129 faced, but its cause remains unknown. Was it a mechanical failure? Human error? A collision with an American submarine? No definitive answers have emerged, only theories and the silent claims of twisted steel resting at the ocean's bottom. K-278 Komsomolets. On April 7, 1989, the Soviet submarine K-278 Komsomolets sank in the Norwegian Sea, killing 42 crew members. This saddening event became one of the most serious naval disasters of the Cold War, engulfed by the risk of high-tech military equipment and the dangers of nuclear-powered submarines. The Komsomolets was built to dive to extreme depths, a feature made possible by its special titanium hull. This submarine was the only one of its kind, designed to avoid detection by enemy forces. In 1984, it even set a world record by diving to over 3,000 feet deep. It was also armed with advanced torpedoes that could travel at speeds faster than most submarines. However, despite its impressive technology, the submarine safety systems were not enough to prevent the disaster. The fire started while the Komsomolets was 1,200 feet underwater. A short circuit caused a fire in the back of the submarine, which quickly spread when hydraulic fluid caught fire. Even though the crew tried to close off the parts of the submarine, the fire and smoke spread to important areas. The crew performed an emergency procedure, bringing the submarine to the surface. However, the fire kept burning, and it was worsened by leaks in the air system. The cold temperature of the water, just 2 degrees Celsius, made it difficult for the crew to survive. Rescue operations were hard due to the bad weather and the location being far from help. Out of the 69 crew members, 42 died, most from hypothermia. Only one of the 5 crew members who tried to use the submarine's escape pod survived, as the pod failed. In addition to the human loss, the disaster also raised concerns about the environment. The submarine carried a nuclear reactor and nuclear warheads, which could leak radiation into the sea. The wreck now lies at a depth of over 5,000 feet, and although early reports said there was little risk, later studies found that the radiation was leaking, especially cesium-137 and strontium-90. HMS Thetis. On June 1, 1939, HMS Thetis, Britain's newest T-class submarine, left Birkenhead for Liverpool Bay to conduct her final diving trials. What began as a demonstration of British naval engineering ended in disaster. By the time the sun set, 99 lives were lost, and one of the Royal Navy's most critical peacetime tragedies had occurred. HMS Thetis launched on June 29, 1938. At the Cammell Laird shipyard in Birkenhead, was designed as an advanced vessel. At 275 feet long and weighing 1,500 tons, she was equipped with advanced torpedo systems and manned by a skilled crew of 103, including 59 naval personnel, shipbuilders from Cammell Laird, admiralty overseers, and technical observers. The trial started with complications. The submarine's first attempt to submerge at 2 p.m. failed due to excessive buoyancy. As the crew adjusted ballast and checked systems, torpedo officers Lieutenant Frederick Woods began inspecting the initial torpedo tubes. Unknown to Woods, the test cock on Tube 5 was blocked by enamel paint, falsely indicating the tube was sealed. Misinterpreting the indicators, the inner door of Tube 5 was opened while the outer bow cap was still exposed to the sea. Seawater flooded the torpedo compartment, causing the bow to sink to the seabed 150 feet below the surface. Despite releasing a smoke candle and an indicator buoy, it took 2 hours for the tugboat Griebkach to raise the alarm. Meanwhile, the stern of the Thetis remained partially above water, but conditions inside rapidly worsened. The rescue efforts were, unfortunately, slow. The destroyer HMS Brazen located the submarine by dropping explosive charges to signal its presence. However, attempts to establish communication or provide assistance failed. The crew attempted to escape using the submarine's aft escape chamber. The forward chamber was too deep for safe use. The process required men to exit 2 at a time, but early attempts failed due to difficulties. Out of 103 on board, only 4 men, 2 naval officers, 1 stoker, and a shipyard fitter successfully escaped. With each passing hour, rising carbon dioxide levels, cramped conditions, and panic took their toll. Attempts to use the escape chamber after these initial successes failed, leading to further deaths. The remaining crew gave in to carbon dioxide poisoning. Rescue teams eventually salvaged the Thetis, but it was too late for the 99 victims. ARA San Juan. The story of ARA San Juan is one of pride and tragedy. This submarine, built in Germany and commissioned in 1985, was a key part of Argentina's navy. Over the years, it proved its strength, especially during exercises like Fleet X-294, where it outsmarted U.S. anti-submarine forces and sank the USS Mount Whitney in a war game. But despite its achievements, the submarine's journey ended in heartbreak in November 2017. On the 15th of November 2017, the Argentinian submarine ARA San Juan, with 44 crew members on board, lost communication while traveling from Ushuaia to Mar del Plata. The submarine's last reported position was 200 nautical miles southeast of the San Jorge Gulf. The vessel had reported water leakage into the forward batteries, which caused a fire that was extinguished. The submarine continued to operate on its aft batteries before losing all contact. By the 17th of November, the submarine had been officially declared missing, and a large-scale search and rescue operation was launched. However, more shocking was the fact that the submarine only carried oxygen sufficient for 7 to 10 days when submerged. The urgency of the situation led to an international response. The U.S. Navy deployed advanced technology including sonar buoys and P-8A Poseidon aircraft, while British, Brazilian, Chilean, and Russian vessels joined the operation. Despite these efforts, false leads, including detected noises and heat signatures, diverted resources and delayed progress. On the 23rd of November, A surprising discovery came when the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization identified a hydroacoustic anomaly similar to an underwater explosion. The event had occurred mere hours after the submarine's last contact on the 15th of November. This news confirmed the likelihood of an implosion due to the pressure at the reported depth and ended all hopes of finding survivors. As of the 30th of November, 15 days after the disappearance, the Argentinian Navy officially ended the rescue operation. USS Tang. The USS Tang was one of the most successful submarines of World War II, known for her operations in the Pacific. Commanded by Richard O'Kane, a skilled and bold leader, Tang had an incredible track record. Over just 5 patrols, she sank up to 33 Japanese ships, making her one of the most successful American submarines of the war. But her story ended in a heartbreaking game of fate, where she was sunk by her own torpedo. Built at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard, the Balao-class submarine was launched in 1943 and wasted no time proving her worth. Tang was engineered for speed and power, armed with advanced torpedoes and heavy artillery. Her first 4 patrols were full of extraordinary victories, with Tang crushing Japanese supply lines and rescuing American airmen. Each mission added to her reputation as a fearless warrior of the seas. Her 5th and unfortunately final patrol began in September 1944. Tang traveled into the dangerous Formosa Strait, a route heavily guarded by the Japanese. On the night of October 24th, the submarine launched a bold attack on a large enemy convoy. The crew fired torpedoes with almost scary accuracy, sinking ship after ship to show that when it came to tactical expertise, no one could top the Japanese. However, this success was about to turn into tragedy. As Tang targeted one last vessel, her final torpedo malfunctioned. Instead of heading toward the enemy, it made a deadly circle and struck the submarine itself. The explosion was devastating, tearing through the hull and sending Tang sinking to the ocean floor. Most of the crew died instantly, while others were trapped in the sinking vessel. Amid the panic, a handful of survivors managed to escape using emergency breathing devices called Momsen's lungs. For a crew of 87, only 9 men survived. Commander O'Kane was among them, though their difficulty didn't end there. They were captured by Japanese forces and survived months in a brutal prisoner of war camp. Minerve. The French submarine Minerve was a diesel-electric vessel that had a short but memorable service history. Launched in 1961 and commissioned in 1964, Minerve operated primarily in the Mediterranean Sea. The submarine was part of the Daphne class, known for its relatively small size but impressive performance. Minerve was designed for high flexibility and was equipped with 12 torpedo tubes, a crew of 45, and advanced sonar systems. On January 27, 1968, Minerve was returning to her home port in Toulon after a routine mission when around 7:55 a.m., Minerve last communicated with an aircraft above, advising it she would reach her destination in about an hour. That was the last time anyone heard from the submarine. Despite a massive search effort involving numerous ships and submarines, Minerve and her crew of 52 went missing without a trace. The search was called off after several days, and the submarine was presumed lost in the deep waters of the Gulf of Lion. In the years following her disappearance, families of the lost crew fought for answers. The French Navy kept details about the incident classified under secret defense, leading to frustration and suspicion. The families' hunt for the truth was a long and difficult battle. In 2007, Christophe Agnes, the son of one of the officers, managed to gain access to the secret files but found no new information. The mystery of what had happened to the Minerve continued to haunt the families. It wasn't until 2018 that Hervé Favre, the son of Minerve's last commander, pushed for the declassification of the submarine's files, and the French government announced they would review the case. In the same year, Favre and the other family members sent an open letter calling for the search for the Minerve's wreck to be resumed. Their plea was heard, and in February 2019, the French government announced that a renewed search for the submarine would take place. The search began in July 2019, and after weeks of effort, the wreckage of Minerve was finally discovered on July 21, 2019, about 30 miles south of Toulon. The wreck was found broken into 3 main sections spread across 900 feet. Despite the destruction of the submarine, identifying the wreck was possible due to the readable markings of mine and S on the hull. The families finally had answers, though the discovery brought mixed emotions, relief for some, but grief for the tragic loss of their loved ones. C-80. The Soviet submarine C-80 was a Project 613 class diesel-powered submarine. It was built during the early 1950s and was known for being part of the Soviet Navy's strategic force during the Cold War. However, its story of destruction is probably the most mysterious story you have ever heard. On January 26, 1961, C-80 left its base in Polyarny near the Kola Peninsula. on a routine mission to patrol the Barents Sea. The submarine, with 68 crew members aboard, was tasked with reconnaissance and testing new equipment. The mission was considered normal until the incident occurred. The submarine was reportedly traveling at a depth of about 500 feet when a mechanical failure struck, a valve malfunction leading to seawater flooding the engine room, eventually affecting the submarine's ability to stay afloat. The crew attempted to repair the damage, but due to a series of errors, the flooding worsened. When the submarine became unable to keep control of the flooding, the commander decided to surface the submarine. However, this decision came too late. By the time they attempted to surface, the damage was already too severe. The crew was unable to recover from this situation. It is believed that several crew members made desperate efforts to escape, but unfortunately, the C-80 sank to the bottom of the Barents Sea at a depth of about 750 feet. The submarine remained missing for several years, and its disappearance was not initially reported. A search was conducted, but the wreckage wasn't discovered until 7 years later, in 1968, by local fishermen. They found the wreck, and the Soviet Navy soon launched a recovery mission. Despite this, the wreckage wasn't fully retrieved until 1969. Only a partial lift was conducted, and much more of the wreckage was left at the bottom of the sea. The official investigation concluded that the sinking was due to the flooding of the engine room caused by the malfunctioning valve and the failure to address the issue quickly enough. However, there were conflicting reports from crew members, some of whom suggested that the submarine might have collided with an underwater object, such as a foreign submarine or even a military vessel.